Economic abuse is a form of family violence that often goes unnoticed, but it can have significant impacts on a person's independence and ability to make financial decisions. It usually is only recognized once you've left your relationship. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the signs of economic abuse and how it is a part of coercive control and why it's now legally recognized under the Family Law Amendment Act in Australia. And we're going to discuss those new laws coming into effect and how it may affect. We're also going to talk about some red flags or some real life examples to see whether you are experiencing financial or economic abuse. So listen to this episode if you feel like your partner controls your money or financial decisions, or if you've been told you're bad with money, if you're worried the financial abuse is still going after separation, or if you just want to understand the new changes that are coming in based on this. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Now, obviously, this episode comes with a trigger warning. This episode discusses economic abuse and coercive control, which may be distressing for some viewers and listeners. So if you need support, please, of course, call 1-800-RESPECT, 1-800-737-732, or if you feel triggered, call Lifeline, or you can chat with them on their website. Okay, so let's get to the jingle and let's get started.
Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
So, Mum, the new changes to the Family Law Act are coming in on the 10th of June, and we've done an episode talking about those changes. And one of the new things they're recognizing that has happened is they recognize financial and economic abuse. But I think some people might not actually know what that is. So that's why I was like, we need to do an episode on this.
Yes.
So that anyone listening may come to the realization, oh, they actually are going through this or accidentally causing it to the other person. Economic abuse is when someone controls, manipulates, or limits your financial independence. And like we've said, it's now recognized as a family violence under the Family Law Act. We're going to run through some examples, Mark.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk about how it works with the family laws. So just have a little think. I'm going to read through them and Mum will take some of your comments as well. But while you're listening today, if you're walking the dog, if you're driving to work, have a little think about have a little think about these options and see if any of these are happening to you. So monitoring your spending and not letting you choose how to use your money. Now, we're not talking about budget setting and goal setting. We're talking about where they really just don't let you use your money. Is that right, Mum?
Yep, that's absolutely right.
Another example is forcing you to buy things or signing contracts you don't want to sign against your will. Do you come across that a lot, Mum?
Yes. That's one lady many years ago with she had pneumonia and she got out of hospital that day. He stopped by at a car yard and had her sign a contract for a 4-wheel drive vehicle on the way home, and then he left and it disappeared with him. Yeah, so definitely coercive control.
Okay. Making you lend or give your money or belongings to others.
Yep. Or back to them. Yeah, I need money from you today. Yep, absolutely.
Creating debts in your name without your consent. Now, I have heard some horror stories through the Women's Legal Services. They have a financial abuse section that does help people get out of this particular issue, I've heard, where they are going behind your back and signing things and getting credit cards in people's names. So this does happen.
Oh, it does.
This does happen. Now, these are all kind of really obvious, though. Like, it's kind of like, well, of course, this is financial abuse, but there are some other ones that are less obvious. Withholding information about joint finances. Now, this one, you may think, oh, well, they've just always been in control of that. That's what they've always done. But a good test is to just, if it's safe, to say, hey, I'm just wondering, can I have a look at how the money goes and flows through our accounts and how does it all work? I'd love to learn.
Do you know?
And if they say no,
it's
not a good sign.
Do you know, I often gauge whether a person's going to be open and honest about financial disclosure about things. When I ask my clients, did you ever see their superannuation statement? Did you ever see any envelope come in with superannuation? It's different now. Everything's on email, but there are people who've been married for 15, 20 years and had no idea what superannuation fund their partner contributed to. And that sort of secretness is often a sign that they really love their money and they're controlling their partner.
Another one is stopping you from accessing your bank account or making you hand over your account details whilst you're doing disclosure. And yes, if you're in a happy married couple or de facto relationship, of course, you may share that information. But if it's forced or they're stopping you from accessing, then that's also a bit of a red flag.
And the banks say never give anyone your password or your PIN code, because what I've seen happen many times is they get into the site and they change your password and you are completely locked out then.
Another one that may not be so shocking to you, but some people just may think this is normal, and that's making big financial decisions without your input. So you have joint money, or maybe you don't see it as joint money and you see it as their money because they're the main breadwinner. They may just one day turn up with a car and have not discussed that they bought a car and they've just turned up with a car, or they just one day buy a boat. And there's no discussion with you about that.
Yeah.
Mum, you were talking about an ostrich farm the other day.
Yes, the ostrich. She wanted no part of it. So she had input, but it was ignored. So that was something he was doing off his own bat, and it really worried her, like I said, to the point that she left. But yes, these big decisions, you may say something, but they do it anyway.
And sometimes people, and this is part of the coercive control that we're going to get into, feel that that's their right because they're the one that's earning all the money. Maybe you're just the stay-at-home, which is not just, because there's a lot of work in being stay-at-home. But, you know, there is this mind manipulation to make you think, okay, well, that makes sense, that of course they can buy whatever car they want whenever they want because it's a big financial decision, but I don't really have a say because it's not my money.
Yes, and I mean that's really a step back into traditional 1950s gender roles. And if they've been brought up like that, they will impose it. And it's so gradual that you, when you get together, that you start to think, oh, it's theirs. And then you don't realise after a while that you've actually lost all of your autonomy.
Another one is spending household money, like the groceries or the rent, on gambling or personal interest or risky stuff. So just taking the money that maybe you put aside every week for groceries, and they've gone off and
blowing it. Yep,
gambled it.
Do you know another form of that is I've come across where the person takes the money and they buy all the groceries. They don't let the other person have any say at all. You know, to where it seems weird, if you know what I mean.
To be fair, there's some partners that just don't want to know, that just don't have any say in the groceries.
Yeah, that's fine, as long as it's not imposed on you. I think key to coercive control is with the intention or the effect of depriving you of autonomy. Yeah.
Yes. Another one that I wasn't aware of was putting assets in your name so they can remove their liability. I didn't think about that as well.
Yeah.
But seems to be an example.
Yeah, true.
And then the other one is putting assets solely in their name to limit you having any control or access over it. Now that's a common one that I do hear about a lot. Yeah. And we get people writing in saying, I don't have any access to it. The property settlement, I don't get anything because it's all in their name.
It's all his, or all hers. And you know, I mean, sometimes I get a lot of people where they had a house before they got together, you know, maybe a second marriage or a later marriage, and then they somehow end up taking the other person's credit card debts and other liabilities and joining them into the mortgage to keep them debt free. That can also be quite an abusive form, you know, and there might have been an understanding that the other person would then help pay off the mortgage, but they don't, you know.
Now, this one flies under the radar for a lot of people who are going through it, Mum, and I don't think they even notice it until after. or it actually traps people. And that's if they prevent you from working or they make it really hard for you to keep a job. So that might be, oh no, you stay at home, you look after the children, that's your role. That's why I married you. And you may be wanting to get a job, you may be wanting to earn some cash. And it's a way to keep you financially dependent upon them.
Yep.
The other part of it saying making it hard for you to keep your job. I've also seen that where they may have the really well-earning job and maybe little Johnny is sick frequently and calls and you're the one who has to go do the picking up. So you're the one that's going to get the boot for not turning up as often because your kids are sick, etc. Or causing issues with your workplace or you know.
I've seen people disable cars so that their partner can't go to work. And I know this is gender-based, but this in the 70s, it was a thing you'd hear it so often. No wife of mine is going to work. No woman in my household is going to work. I'll do everything. And the women who get to stay at home and they want to stay at home as a result of a genuine joint decision, that's wonderful. But if you are being stripped of your autonomy so that you, on the pretext that the other person's earning all the money and you should stay at home, it takes away your decision-making and probably your joy if you're not doing what you want to do. It's your life. We all come in on our own and we all go out one at a time. And we need to, do you know what, Laura? A lot of times I hear people say, they won't let me. I'm not allowed. They won't let me. Like they're a child on pocket money, you know?
I think that is a good question to ask yourself. Do you say, I'd really like to buy that, but I'm not allowed, or they won't let me? Because that is a really good tell that you might be under this kind of control. There are a couple more other ones I just want to touch on. These ones are more maybe after separation, but secretly keeping significant money or assets hidden or separate, the whole non-disclosure, considered financial abuse.
It is, because you're attempting to prevent the other person from getting their fair share of the property pool. It's, you know, you're using the system to stop them getting their fair share, and you might give stuff away temporarily or hide it, and so from the court's point of view, non-disclosure is definitely under the definition of family violence, systems abuse, coercive control, and the court will make findings accordingly. And you know what? So that's where financial abuse continues after separation. But it does usually documented in letters and emails and court documents. And so people get caught. Coercive control is something that continues post-separation. And people don't stop. They don't know to stop. And I'm hoping now that the court will run with that and go.
And I'm going to get into that in a minute. Couple more things that happen post-separation. Not paying child support. Mum's rolling her eyes if you're listening to the podcast and not watching the YouTube video, but we're rolling our eyes because it's so common. I just want to get up and scream.
Yeah.
And I just am hoping that these new changes, Mum, you were talking about it. Yeah. How are they going to be looking in court at child support moving forward?
They're going to look at the child support paid, but they're not going to be looking at the child support that may be paid in the future or is going to be asked to be paid. They're just looking at what's being paid. I actually would have made a terrible judge, because even in my practice, so I haven't seen as many things as these people sitting up on the bench see, but time after time after time, I can tell you that there'll be a significant child support debt. Children and the parent who is owed the child support are struggling financially, and they've got this debt. They maybe attach the notice from the department to their affidavit and say, look, they're not paying child support. And then, hallelujah, the morning of the hearing, suddenly it's paid and here's the receipt, and they pay it just before court.
How coincidental.
Yeah, and there used to really be not much you could do about that. But now it does fit in under that definition of financial abuse. And you know what? When you're dividing property settlement, making property settlement, one of the factors is whether or not a person has the care of a child under the age of 18. And if you've got a child under 18 and the court is now only looking at the money that has been paid, not paid in the future. And the court can see that you're not likely to get much support, what they call it, when the spotlight of the court goes off. That may add up to a larger share of the property pool for you. The court can use their discretion to give you extra because you're going to suffer, it seems, because of who you married.
All right. So I'm going to ask you some questions now.
All right, fire away.
And I want you, not you, Mum, I'm asking the listeners the questions. And I want you to answer yes or no to these questions. And then I'm going to tell you at the end, maybe you might need to be doing something about this situation. So when it comes to your control over finances, does your partner monitor your spending or make you justify every purchase? Are you prevented from accessing your own bank accounts or financial information? Has your partner forced you to give them their bank account details or passwords? Feel scared talking about money with your partner? Are you forbidden from making financial decisions or spending money independently? When it comes to financial decisions and responsibilities, has your partner made big financial decisions without you or kept you in the dark about joint finances? Does your partner spend money designated for essential things like rents or bills on their personal interests, gambling, or risky activities? Has your ex coerced or forced you into loans, debts, or contracts you didn't want to? Does your ex insist on putting assets solely in their name or refuse to include your name on major purchases like houses and cars? And has your ex put assets solely in your name to avoid responsibility or repayment for debt? Now, when it comes to limiting your financial independence, has your partner ever stopped you from working or made it difficult for you to keep a job? Has your partner ever manipulated you to stay at home and be the stay-at-home parent when it's not what you actually wanted to do? Has your ex made you feel guilty or accused you of being selfish when you spend money on yourself? Has your ex forced you to lend or give money or belongings that you wanted to keep to others? And does your ex refuse to contribute to household or parenting expenses? When it comes to hidden finances and deception, the disclosure stuff, has your ex secretly kept significant money or assets from you? Are you worried that your partner is hiding assets or money during separation? Has your ex created debts in your name without your knowledge or consent? And does your ex refuse to pay child support or deliberately delay property settlement after separation? And lastly, do you feel trapped or insecure because you can't access any money? Are you constantly anxious about how your partner will react to your spending decisions? Do you feel ashamed, isolated, or powerless when it comes to managing money? And do you worry that leaving the relationship isn't possible because of your financial situation? And have you felt pressured or manipulated into financial decisions that didn't feel right for you? And has your ex ever said, if you leave, I will make sure you get nothing? Because if you answered yes to any of these questions, it is very likely or could be likely that you are experiencing financial or economic abuse. And finding out how to get help and getting some financial independence is super, super important. Mum, did you want to add any questions to that?
Yes, it's a terribly sad list. But yes, sometimes one of the reasons I think that a person might keep a partner starved of cash is that they figure if they don't have any money, they can't leave. Okay. And I know someone who luckily got some money from the government one day, and as soon as she found out that she had cash, she went that very day. But it was financially abused and absolutely stuck until that day. And a lot of times, I don't know what it is, but people with big businesses set up their trusts and set up companies. And so you're so busy usually that you don't notice. You expect that you're on them. You think you're a director. You think you're a shareholder. You think you're one of the trustees or a beneficiary, but you're not really sure. And then when you have a look, like when you do the searches, as we teach you in the course, you might find out, A, that you're in a company you didn't really realize you were in. So you're just signing documents that you're told to. Or that although you thought you were in the company, bingo, you're out. And somehow or other they forged a signature and you've lost that autonomy. I remember the feeling of suddenly, of one day, putting a meal on the table from money that I'd made. And your brother was wearing a little shirt I'd bought with my money. And I thought, wow, some people must feel like this all of the time. It was so liberating and so freeing.
Totally.
Yeah, and the car is a thing. So people will find they won't let you have a car, or you can only have a car every second Monday, or you have the unreliable car,
Well, we had that lady whose ex's lawyer sent a letter saying, if you don't drop the domestic violence case, we will take the car off you. I mean,
holy macaroni. Yes.
That's financial abuse.
And it's using a proxy now, I think, now with the central practice direction, because that was years ago, the central practice direction and the way that the court is learning about, we're all learning about what things constitute the abuse and financial abuse. I think in today's atmosphere, climate at the court, that lawyer would have been reported to the Law Society and probably got in trouble with the judge.
Now, I think it's really important, and we're going to get to the changes in the law in a minute as well, and we're going to talk about coercive control in a minute, but I do want to highlight that there's two dynamics, I think, when it comes to financial abuse, and a lot of us do think about the one of the stay-at-home mum who hasn't been able to work, who has no cash of their own at all, or the stay-at-home dad, no cash of their own, and they're the ones that feel really trapped. But there is, and I have heard from many listeners who've written in, where they're actually the main breadwinner and they're still being financially controlled. They are the ones that have all the cash, but their cash is so tightly controlled by their partner that they feel like they can't leave. Whether the money goes into a bank account and then it just all disappears and they've got no idea where it goes. I know one lady said, oh, my wage just goes into this account. I don't know where it goes after that. And so there is two dynamics there, where there's someone on the other side that keeps them trapped because they need the money. So they don't want them to leave.
So what's really interesting about that is when I would see a person who'd come in and say, oh, yes, it all goes into this account and I don't know what happens. I say, well, open up another bank account in another bank, right? So no crossing of the lines. And tell your paymaster or mistress to put your pay in there, in that account. And they usually look at me absolutely horrified and stunned. Firstly, because it hadn't ever occurred to them to do it. And second realization is they could have done it, but they haven't. And that's how trapped they've been.
And I think that takes us to the next bit that I want to talk about, is that economic abuse or financial abuse is a form of coercive control that usually goes hand in hand with other types of coercive control. Now, we've talked about emotional abuse with Coercive. If you haven't listened to that episode, go listen to it. And in that episode, the emotional side of the abuse, where she talks about disrespect and distortion and all of that. So the mental mind games that go on with coercive control, they create cages in their minds that people can't even see, thinking that they're so bad with money, they're useless with money, that the best thing they can do is hand it all over to their partner and just, trust that they're doing the right thing by everybody. And that kind of abuse and emotional manipulation is part of coercive control, to the point where they break the whole person down. And if you haven't listened to the episode, please go and listen to it, because it changes that person's perspective. It changes their understanding of reality, and it changes their understanding that they can do things on their own and they are capable. They're not bad with money.
No.
It's just that's what they've been told.
Yeah.
So coercive control is just something, this is a part of a whole spectrum of things. But the financial abuse is usually one of the really obvious to start with, to go, hang on a minute, why do you say when you go to a cafe with your friend, my partner won't let me have a coffee? What's the underlying thing there? Is it because you guys have got a budget, or is it because you'll get in big trouble? And why are you too afraid to put your wages in a different bank account? Like,
Yeah.
what are the reasons? What
Yeah.
cage has been created in your mind?
I love the way that you've said that. What cages? So people, your friends, if you're in this situation, your friends will not be able to comprehend what you're going through. And if there's physical violence or someone has an affair, they all go, oh, I'd be out of there right away. But they don't understand the power of coercion, that power of that sort of control.
Yeah. And I knew a lady who was really well off, because this happens in poor families as well as wealthy families. I knew a lady who was incredibly well off, and she had the most beautiful handbags, like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Prada, you name it. And people would always go, oh, yeah, I love your handbag. It's so beautiful. You're so lucky. The story behind the handbags, she was never, ever allowed to go in and buy one. It was always bought by her partner. And if she'd ever walked in and bought one, she would have been in so much trouble. So when she did go to a handbag shop, she's like, I was like, oh, if you love it, you should buy it. I'm not allowed to. And I was so shocked that these stories and dynamics exist. And that kind of abuse continues after separation. So look, I think it's really important that people are aware of the economic abuse side of things. And let's not sugarcoat it. The post-separation abuse when it comes to this kind of stuff is quite bad, with the child support and obviously not supporting.
Yeah, not supporting them, telling someone they're going to have to move out of the house when they are totally reliant on you. You know, the biggest fear of anyone who's been put in that gilded cage where they're stay at home, someone else pays all of the bills. The biggest fear is that they will be homeless. And that is exactly what the other person wants them to worry about and tries to keep them.
And I'm going to just read the definition from the Family Law Act 1975, Section 4AB. And because, Mum, you really did want me to highlight this bit for someone that wrote in for us the other day, but this is so important. It's number 2H, and it's this is the definition of family violence. Unreasonably withholding financial support needed to meet the reasonable living expenses of a family member or his or her child at the time when the family member is entirely or predominantly dependent on the other person for financial support. So this is what's kind of happening to some of these people going through the economic and financial abuse. They're entirely dependent on these people until settlement. Yeah. And these people are withholding it. So, Mum, what is the good news? Because that's only been recently added into the Family Law Act.
Yeah.
So what changes, and we'll just touch on it, legal changes protecting victims of economic abuse in the Family Law Act?
So the changes that have gone through Parliament and they start in the courts on the 10th of June is that economic and financial abuse, being a form of family violence, can be taken into account for property settlement when the court considers the strength or the impact on the other person's contributions. So if you've been starved out, not starved, but you know what I mean, no autonomy, no money, you may get an extra number of percentage points of the property pool because your contributions were so hard, you've done it tough. And this behaviour is getting called out. I'm hoping with the training that all of the lawyers are getting now, clearly the judges are, they're across this idea of coercive control now. That's going to be the death knell for people getting away with saying to you, you won't have a penny. I'm going to kick you out of the house. I'm not paying another cent for you. If you leave, you're on your own. All of those sort of things are just going to come back and bite them on the bottom.
I remember with Q&A and someone wrote, oh, my ex has said, if I leave, I'm going to get $0 and he's going to make my life living hell or whatever. And you were like, oh, that's great.
Did he put it in writing? Did he put
it? And that's right. And you meant, no, it's not great that they said that, but it's great that it's in writing because all you have to do is show that to the court and can of whoop butt's going to open. So, Mum, the courts are going to assess financial contributions and sacrifices made due to coercion.
Yes,
they're going to look at that.
They are.
And are they going to consider, say, for example, if they had issues keeping their job because of the ex and the domestic violence, that's going to be considered?
Yep, that'll be considered. I've seen a woman many years ago who couldn't get her teeth fixed throughout the marriage because there was no money allowed for that. And so that also is evidence of how hard your contribution was. The court's going to look at all of that sort of stuff, sort of stuff. And the beauty of it is, while in the relationship it might have been verbal, if you're out post-separation, it's probably going to be in writing, whether it's from a solicitor who should know better or by text message or something, email or something. That's going to be able to show the court, look, this is what they've said now. Imagine what they said through the relationship, and it's been a bad spot. It'll lead to a lot of recognition, I think, for people.
All right. So, Mum, what can people do to prove this stuff? Actually, let's take that step back. What can people do first to get out of this situation? Because I do worry that there are people who are listening to this who haven't left, and they haven't left because they're afraid to talk about money, to do disclosure, to even think about how they could possibly leave.
And, financial abuse can lead or is only a symptom, and there may be other forms of abuse and therefore risk to people. Then, that it may be that it is not safe for you to suddenly go. You need to get some help from one of the charities that will help you get out. You need
call 1-800-RESPECT and they will connect you to the right service in your area. Yes.
And you can start, I think in our very early podcast, we talk about how you can start getting stuff away into another household or keep it packed. It depends on the amount of control that someone's got over you. There are people who can spirit away $100 or $200 every couple of weeks and build up a fund for leaving. They can rent a house in advance to move to or an apartment. But there are some people for whom that is just all too risky. So I think people have to be careful.
And have a safety plan and talk to people to do a risk assessment of your situation.
Yeah.
Now, so obviously there are options. And then money-wise, there's spousal maintenance, child support. So, and then obviously property settlement in the end. To get property settlement is great.
Yeah.
But Mum, how do people prove that they've suffered economic or financial abuse for the courts so that they do get an adjusted property settlement to make up for what they've had to go?
And that's the perennial problem, because these things usually happen behind closed doors and it's hard for the judge to understand or to find the evidence they need. The thing about financial abuse is it's a documented thing. You can, post-separation, financial abuse is easy. It's generally by text, email, letter. You're able to produce that to the court and they can draw an inference. Once you tell them exactly what's been going on, you say what happened, when, if you've got an idea of when, or for how long it continued, and how it made you feel and how it made your contribution harder in your affidavit. And then the court, of course, the other person's going to say, no. But once you start producing a couple of documents, the court will get the hang of that. And I think a lot of people who are abusive financially don't realise that other people can now see it and understand it, that the court is now going to take notice of it, and they generally won't stop. And if they really, there are people who deliberately drag out court proceedings because they're trying to starve the other person out. They bring stupid applications. They just generally act in a bad faith way. Then the court can look at that. If you have to go to court for spousal maintenance in these days and it's successful, then I think the court is entitled to assume that the person who wouldn't pay it to you without you going to court is actually committing financial abuse towards you. Because if the court's satisfied that you've got a need and they've got capacity and they still won't do it until the court tells them, or on the morning of the court can draw an inference from the very fact you had to make that application into the past. But there've been these cases, and we had a real success story, didn't we, Laura, where a person in their affidavit put what happened, when it happened, and how it made them feel. And my word.
And she had a great outcome.
By herself,
Self-ripped against very big lawyers. We have a great episode called Communicating Your Coercive Control in Legal Documents, which I highly recommend you go listen to. We also have a great episode on just how to write an affidavit. But of course, always get legal advice. But it really comes down to, like you said, Mum, telling your story and showing the judge your lived experience.
Yeah.
So I guess can be really hard to sit down and try and explain to someone who's never been in a coercive controlling situation how you had money in a bank account, but you were not allowed to buy anything. So have you got examples? Have you got some examples of where you've asked and they've said definitely not, or they've written some rules down that you must follow? Or have you had other people witness you saying it that maybe could say, oh, yeah, that time we went handbag shopping, and you said, I can't because I'll get in trouble.
Yeah.
So trying to think of those experiences for during the relationship. And a great way to do that is go and see a psychologist and kind of bring those memories back out.
Yes.
Because that Krasi talked about that memory blindness, I think it was, where your brain shuts it off.
Because they can't cope.
And moves it somewhere else because it doesn't want to have to deal with the consequences. Going, oh, wait, that's really controlling and manipulative.
And that's an important point, because often a person will put something like that in an affidavit, but only getting close to trial, for instance, but not have seen it or even mentioned it in the early stages of the proceedings because they weren't aware of it in their mind. They didn't see it as odd because they were so damaged. And that's why the police have a power to bring a family violence order. Even if the victim doesn't do it, the police can. And that's because they know sometimes that the victim of any form of family violence, including coercive control, sometimes can't see their way out of that or even identify it. And they even they worry. I know that the courts worry that a woman, particularly under a really intensive pressure of coercive control, may change their mind about proceeding if they proceed. So the police will do it because it's needed. And eventually a person, as they get some distance between them and their abuser and start to think like they were, they'll find themselves again, Laura. They'll find who they were before they got in that washing machine. And the other thing about coercive control is it rarely stops at separation. It's the one form of family violence that will keep going post-separation, and you'll have the evidence.
I think for people who haven't been educated on it or been around it or understand it at all, when you hear the term family violence, it just sounds like hitting and I heard someone just recently say, oh, but they would never hit me. But in the same breath, they also said, I'm not allowed to leave the house after midnight. I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not allowed to spend any money. I'm not allowed keys to the house. All these things where people are just like, that's shocking. But in their mind, it's completely normal.
Yeah.
But until you see that and speak to people who check your reality, because remembering they're distorting your reality, checking your reality with people outside of the relationship to say, that is so not normal. Then maybe it's easier for people to see, okay, I am experiencing family violence, because I hear a lot of people being really cautious or they have trepidation over saying they're experiencing family violence because they don't have a black eye. But this is extreme family violence because it is controlling everything.
Yeah,
about your life. Coercive control is completely, you are a prisoner. And prisoners sometimes don't get beat up, but you're still a prisoner.
And it might be the prison is one that has been made in your mind with your unwitting cooperation. And it's in there, and you will need some therapy to get out of that situation. And as much as you see it as normal, frighteningly, so will your ex see it as normal for you to adhere for these rules. And if you don't, then there can be ructions. So you need to keep safe, guys, please.
This is what we think, some of the things you can do as well. Start documenting things. If you've heard of the Empower You app or the ARC app, you can literally put stuff in there to keep records if it's safe. Text messages, if you've been forced to sign things, keeping records of interactions, if you've got any text messages that show that they're super controlling you through that, maybe send it to a friend. Just get that evidence started. Mum, the other thing you talked about is some people start opening a bank account somewhere completely different, often a different bank account, different bank, and just putting money in there when they can so that they've got an escape fund. And if you've got your own wages and you do want to leave, like you said, Mum, you can put your wages in another bank account. It doesn't have to go into a joint bank account. If you're separating, it's your wages.
Yep.
As long as you're not depriving of the other person of being able to live, then that's your entitlement.
Yep. And if you want to contribute to a mortgage or whatever, you can do that from your other account.
Yeah.
You know, you need to start to separate your finances if you're separating at all.
Yes. And then the other thing is get legal advice.
Mm-hmm.
Go and see a lawyer just to find out where you stand so you understand the process. A lot of people get stuck, particularly in economic and financial abuse situations, because they cannot see themselves a way out without them being homeless or without them not being able to afford anywhere to go or to eat or whatever, or to look after the kids. But a lawyer knows the rules. A lawyer knows stuff. And if all it takes is just to go in for a 30-minute consult to talk to a lawyer, to get them to give you it will lift you up and it'll give you some empowerment to go, okay, I'm not stuck.
No.
And then I think another thing you might need to do is maybe just go and talk to a financial counselor or a financial advisor, someone who can start to, if you really have been severely controlled financially and economically, you are going to need to learn the ropes. You are going to need to learn some things that you might not know how to do. If you're feeling like you've never done it before and you're nervous, then go and get someone to teach you. And there are plenty of those people out there. And there's great podcasts as well. Mm-hmm. And then also go and talk to your family and your friends that you can trust and get them to help you brainstorm if you've separated. All those times where they've seen it and gone, I don't like the look of that. And then, of course, you can call 1-800-RESPECT, or you can go to 1-800-RESPECT.org.au and create a safety plan and get directed to the right services. There's also the National Debt Helpline. That is ndh.org.au. You can go have a look at that if you're in debt issues because of the financial abuse. There's also a men's referral service. If you're interested, I'll put the link for that below. And we'll put some information sheets about economic and financial abuse below as well. But Mum, can you give us something that people can embroider on a cushion?
Okay.
They're going through this kind of crap at the moment, financial abuse, economic abuse, after separation or during. Is there something that you think might help?
Mm-hmm. This is the Federal Circuit and Family Court's bread and butter, okay? Every person who's had to go to court to get a property settlement has been in a situation where the other person doesn't agree, okay? And there have been tens of thousands of cases over the years. The court, like you say, they know how to deal with it. Your lawyers know how to deal with it. All you have to do is go and ask, and you will get through it. There are no cases still in the court from 1975 or 1990 or even 2012, 15. You do get through it. And with the 2021 amendments to the Central Practice Direction, this court is dedicated now to pulling you through. Now, I hope for you that you can have a mediation and sort it out without the court. But if you have to go to court, that's what they're there for. You will, one way or another, get yourself free. And I promise you, you'll feel fabulous. Even if you're in the tiniest little place, paint it white and hang some gingham curtains and make it yours. Think of it as minimalism. But I'm here to tell you, you get through and it feels great.
I can't embroider that on a cushion, Mum.
No, sweetheart, we can't.
But that is great news for anyone listening today. And it really comes down to understand your rights and then start taking proactive steps safely.
There's always a way. Yeah. That might fit on a cushion.
There's always a way.
Yes.
There we go. Now, if you're interested in listening to any of the other episodes about coercive control or post-separation abuse, I'll put the links below. You can always go to our website, thedivorcecourse.com.au, and up the top along the bar, there's the free resources section. If you click on that, go to the podcast library and then search what you're dealing with. coercive control or emotional abuse, whatever it is. And a whole list will come up and you can start listening.
We've been doing this for years and years.
And
So
even-
other people find us.
Even better, if you're not on our email list, I would like to say I am loving sending emails out to you guys, and I'm loving the responses we get back. Mum and I cried twice today with email responses we got from listeners who've been listening to it for 3 years, one of them, and finally getting what they wanted themselves, which was amazing. But if you want to jump on our email list, I'm always sending out emails of support and encouragement. We send out our new episodes that come out each week. And we also, when we have Q&As that are open to everybody, we also have them available in our email. So go and subscribe to our email list, and we'd love to start a conversation with you. All right, Mum, one more thing. Congratulations. This is our 5th year. We missed the celebration. It was in March.
Was it?
March the 19th. March the 19th.
We missed it. Oh.
We have been doing this podcast for 5 years. Can you believe it?
And the very first one, remember that bird flew at the window?
An owl.
An owl.
An entire owl.
An entire owl. And Laura has a fear of birds. Well, she had a fear of birds.
Did
have a fear of birds. And it was teaching me not to move. Remember?
And look at it.
It's taken,
it's taken me 5 years to get a headset.
Oh, well. No.
Oh, well.
It's
but
been
anyway,
fun,
thank
Laura,
you.
and let's here's to the next 5 years.
I know. I really hope that no one has listened to us for 5 years, but I do know people have been listening to us for 3 years. And I do apologize for the audio quality as we've slowly learned how to do things as we go, and we will only get better. But it is because of our listeners, it's because of you that we keep doing this. And I really do have to say the emails you're sending us really keeping us fueled to keep going. So thank you for everybody for letting us know how you're going, and we wish you all the best of luck with what you're dealing with now. If you're listening to this, please reach out and get some help, and we'll be here for you next week. Thanks, Mum.
Bye, Laura. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.